What's up, everybody? It's me, Colton, for MMOHuts.com, and today I'm joined by two very special individuals.
Two nerds.
Oh, two nerds.
You're Richard Yu.
Richard Yu. I'm brand director for Titanforge Games, working on Smite.
And I'm AJ Walker, or HiRezAjax, lead designer for Smite.
Yes. And I'm going to be asking some hard-hitting questions today of our two interviewees. The first one, just to kind of keep things a little light, my interview with Chris this morning got a little heavy. Not in a bad way, like I didn't upset him, but
cried?
when are you guys gonna do the right thing and give Ares ult and AoE execute?
Yes,
do
it.
He's gonna do the right thing.
Let's do it right now, guys.
He's gonna hit the button. He's got a big button that says
Done.
"Do the right
Put it
thing"
on.
on it.
I went ahead and give it to everyone.
Yeah.
Might as well.
Put it on the tier 5 skin only.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, that'll
Yeah.
be fair.
All right.
This guy.
This guy. So, another question I had. This is more about character design, and I'd love to hear you guys both weigh in. So, Hera's a mage, which is, in my and in Jason's opinion, kind of an interesting decision. Was that always the plan for her to be a mage?
Yes, it was.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was. We thought that Hera should have a kit where she told her subjects to work for her and her teammates. So we didn't necessarily think we wanted her skirmishing around and getting beat up and bashed up by all these guys. It didn't feel like royal. It didn't feel like a queen of the gods.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people had a very guardian vibe from her.
Yeah.
And I know that, and that's kind of where the Hera and Argus idea came from. We wanted to give her something unique in Smite. That's not something that you would see in her common depiction, but something that was still very Hera and very lore accurate. So she is the mage, but she's got her guardian with her. So you've got a little bit of both.
She can cast and command from the back, so it's really interesting to see.
Yeah. Now that we've kind of cleared the backlog of questions from January that we didn't get to ask.
Go back to 2 more years.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you for just a moment, focus on you, Richard. A little bit more about what a brand manager entails and what that means for the average player.
Yeah. So it's kind of nebulous to many, but what I do is I help oversee what goes into the game and create the strategy on what will resonate with players. Future planning. So I collaborate with many different teams. AJ is instrumental in that. So we work well together on defining the God plan, the story, the lore, the universe, features that will help players of all kinds, from new players, like making a decision of, we're going to take the time to update the arena map, and also the conquest map, and stuff like that.
And decisions like roll queue and ranked update, the things that are
I'm
coming up.
so glad for that.
Those are the type of features that me and Richard plan and strategize together to really figure out how we can use our resources best to make our players happy.
Game development is just a complicated beast, where on paper it sounds like, we'll just flip a switch and this will come on.
And it just pow.
Indeed, it just like pow. But no, we have 100 developers working on it.
Yeah.
With a tight deadline, updating every 2 weeks. Only game on 3 platforms. Now going to be on 4. You have to make strategic decisions on what to invest your time on. The boring stuff.
Do you feel like that process will be made easier or harder by the merging of platforms into one single cross-platform entity?
Definitely. So this year we invested a lot of time back end and front end to create unified features and support, so we can hopefully, as ideally, work together in tandem.
Right.
So we have to get cert with Microsoft and with Sony and Nintendo. We can find production procedures to make it easier across the board. It makes testing easier, makes certification easier, makes pipeline features easier. This is probably putting everyone to sleep, by the way.
This is the real game dev stuff, though, right?
Yeah.
This is a real deal.
There's a section of our audience that cares about this kind of thing, so I want to make sure that they get their piece.
It's like us and like 2 other people.
Yeah,
That's still great.
Let's talk about what the people really want to hear about.
Okay.
King Arthur and Merlin.
Oh yeah.
So pumped.
I'm
Awesome.
incredibly excited about them. As a kid, I was like, the stories about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table were some of my favorites to read. It's what got me inspired in medieval fantasy, like what really set me in love with that genre of literature. What really why was the decision for them pushed forward, and what kind of led you to the idea of going from typically a game focused on deities to heroes?
Well, it was really driven by Richard and I trying to keep coming up with really cool ways to implement new gods into the game. So last year, Richard joined the team, and I was describing to him, oh, okay, we do a new Pantheon, and this is how we do it, and stuff like that. And we were like, well, how can we make it better? And we're like, 3 Pantheons with 3 different characters, 3 different cultures. So we get even more cool stuff, more diversity. We're like, okay, next year, we're working on this again. We're like, how do we top that? Or how do we do something that still fits the game but feels even more exciting in a different way? And we were talking about, I was pitching a lot of characters, and we were pitching Arthur and Merlin, and just the fact their fantasy is so widespread and so legendary and so well known and by lots of different people, they felt so adjacent to mythology to me, like just a few hundred years and they might as well be gods or myths of legend. But
And I think the gameplay kit, when you, at first I will admit, I was like, I don't know, will the community like this? What, this is going to be different for some, but once I dove into the lore of it and understood it better, I'm like, okay, it does fit into the mythological, legendary universes we have. They can coincide with Medusa and Thor and Zeus. And then what really sold me was the gameplay side of things, the stance switching, action of King Arthur, and Merlin. I don't even know if I could talk about Merlin.
we've been saying little bits about him, that he is the like triple stance switcher, but he handles a little differently than a normal.
You guys could tell us a little bit more. That's all right.
yeah,
We won't complain.
Yeah.
He handles a little differently than any stance switcher in Smite, and he also has 3 stances. But so both characters have a very unique playstyle to them, and they're really fun. Like, I'm really excited about them.
I had another question. Speaking of, while we're on the topic of new gods, obviously there was a teaser that mentioned going down to the depths of the depths of the underworld.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I can say about that one.
It's HRX, actually. Is what it is.
Yeah. Oh.
Solid joke.
Comedian.
Yeah. Yeah. You crushed it. Got it in one take.
I'm out here, guys. That was my interview. Goodbye, guys.
Well
All right,
done.
Those 3 at the end,
You can't give
we
us.
don't want to say any more about. All I would say is just watch the video and pay attention and look what you see there and listen to what I'm saying there, and you can kind of speculate what they could be there.
We'll
I've
tell
already
you
started
that the
speaking.
universe is going to coincide. All the characters are meant to be a meaningful addition to not only game design, but also the Smite universe. We're expanding that lore.
Right.
We did it with Divine Uprising, with the new 3 Pantheons. We did it with HiRezAjax, introducing her, and then introducing King Arthur Merlin, like we just did, and their foe, Jormungandr.
Right.
And then soon enough, you'll see those characters are going to be a meaningful addition to the universe.
Part of our kind of next story arc after Ragnarok, which is going to focus more around the gods' personal rivalries with each other, and that's really where Horus and Set are the literal representation of rivalry between gods.
Yeah.
Oh,
No
yeah.
kidding. So on the subject of moving away from talking about new gods, we've got with the pantheons. You mentioned about meaningful additions to the game. There are a lot of people in the Smite community who seem to operate under the notion that a pantheon needs to be full,
Yes.
air quotes, before you move on to the next one.
Of course.
Which, like, when you say it out loud, sounds dumb, but like,
There's hundreds,
Yeah.
hundreds of gods in a pantheon.
No,
what
we
determines
understand this.
full?
And I talked about this.
what
in
would
the
you
panel.
say to those people? Yeah.
We started a little bit with this messaging last year, which was we just want to focus on making the individual best characters that we can, based on our mythologies we have access to.
That's right.
And what we want to do there is keep diversifying in visual style and cultural style and in gameplay mechanics. And we want to use whichever characters we have access to without limiting ourselves by saying, no, we really need to find another Celtic god. Let's dig deeper.
Yeah.
And that's what we were feeling, and we were starting to feel that. And there are still plenty of great Celtic gods, and of all mythologies, they do exist, but they might not excite us in the way of the ones we want to look at right now.
Right. As long as it meets our goals for game design, art, and to what will resonate with players, we'll do that. And I'm glad that we deviated last year, or rather this year, in our plan, to do what excited us from the game design standpoint, what we believe will add meaningful additions to the roster.
And I think the community is very rightful in this idea they have, and because we operated like that. We did for quite a while, so I understand why they feel that way. But it's important to think of Smite Pantheons as more of an art style or a personality style. It's not an actual category of characters. It doesn't need to be balanced like the 5 colors of Magic. Like if you just stopped printing blue cards or something like that, that would be insane.
I'm sure there would be a lot of people who would actually be happy about that.
Yeah, maybe. I guess. But
you're not wrong.
Smite Pantheons are not so tied to the core gameplay, but they are super important thematically. So we want to make sure we revisit them in many ways. But it's okay to bring in some that are less complete or less full than other, and it's totally great to go back and dive into the biggest ones and still add one more character just because it's that great.
And here's another boring side step, you know, from a product management, marketing, brand, and working with influencers. It was really cool to see how when we did many different pantheons, from Voodoo, from Polynesian, from Slavic, it allowed us to reach to individuals who usually don't cover us. So it allowed us to grow the player base.
Yeah.
This year we did astronomical in reaching more players. For Xbox alone, we actually had more new players in one day than we did at one point than our launch day. We were able to do that to be very strategic with how we view the game. And part of that, once again, is character development. Focusing on interesting characters regardless of Pantheon.
Yep.
What will excite players? What will get people in?
Right.
Priority number 1.
I wanted to zero in on something you said. You mentioned launch day, and that's as close to a good segue to my next question as I'm gonna get. So, Smite is the oldest game, like of the current lineup, right? Smite is the baby. It's the oldest.
That's still playing.
The firstborn
Rip
child.
Global Agenda.
I love Global Agenda.
So, like. Yeah, I was going to say of the currently active
Yes.
ones, RIP Global Agenda.
I got you.
Chris mentioned Global Agenda in our interview this morning, and I'm pretty sure somebody watching that video cried over the loss of Tribes of Sand.
I had a max level character in Global Agenda. I loved that game.
But since Smite is the oldest of the currently running batch, how hard or was it a difficult decision to have Paladins develop for the Switch first rather than Smite?
Ooh, well,
Interesting.
you know, that's an interesting question. You know, of course, we advocate for Smite. I think having Paladins go first allowed us to learn a lot of things.
Right.
So it was significantly easier. Still, it's a daunting task to put any new game into a console, into a new experience. So there's lots for us to do, and we've been working on it for well over a year. But Paladins doing that, yes, they went first, but we were actually simultaneously doing a lot of things. Taking the lessons, it was so interesting to be.
Well, a lot of the core groundwork on the back end affected both games.
Indeed.
So even though it was kind of being applied directly towards Paladins, a lot of that work was going to translate directly to Smite.
Yep. So from a technical standpoint, from a business standpoint, working with Nintendo, from marketing, from UI, we were able to learn a lot of things. But to us, it looks like one came out before, but really we're doing it in tandem.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Got just a couple more questions. I promise I won't keep you long. So, what we've seen, and this is a trend that we see a lot in Smite World Championship settings, is that people like to play gods outside of their traditional environment. I feel like we've seen nothing but support Neja and support Fenrir.
Odin.
Support Fenrir.
Yeah.
And I really, Jason and I are both big fans of the idea that it shows that like there's this huge range of viable gods and that you can do a lot of different things with them. Is that something you guys like to see, and is that something you would encourage more of outside of SPL, or do you think that's something that's only really appropriate in the pro setting?
It's something we definitely like to see, and we actually designed that with intent. The Fenrir supports have been running Lono's Mask, which was an item we designed to specifically allow other characters in the game to flex harder into different roles. It's generally something we really like. We always want to encourage diversity in the gameplay styles. We want gods to be viable, and many gods to be viable, many gods viable in many different ways, many different strategies to be viable. So we're generally pretty happy with this, and honestly, I think there is room for this type of gameplay at all skill levels. I think there are players out there who can play ADC Poseidon or something kind of like that you might think is a little silly, and you can still have a lot of success.
Buy those magic rings.
You can still have a lot of success with that, and we want you to have fun with that. And that is the beauty of a MOBA, right? Is that freedom of expression to try out different combinations of things.
It's exciting to play. It's exciting to see that.
One of the other keystones of the MOBA environment is trying out something and it not working and being assaulted with a variety of racial slurs. Well, on that note, one thing that we see a lot is, and this is true of many MOBAs, and I know that HiRez does a lot to try to combat the toxicity, but I mean, as somebody who regularly every couple of months logs in, tries to play a handful of Conquest games, gets shouted down by obnoxious people, reports them, and then
Goes back to Arena.
is completely demoralized to the point of only playing Arena. Like, what is the plan, or rather, what kind of strategies are you currently implementing or plan to implement in the future to help combat that
Do you know about
toxicity?
our Banhammer initiative?
No, I don't. Can you tell me about it?
I love the idea of a Banhammer
It's
initiative.
wonderful. So here's our Banhammer initiative. So this year, you know, part of our jobs are to focus on individual teams, like how can we make things better. One thing we focused on this year was, hey, how can we improve player behavior?
Right.
We looked at customer support, we looked at reports, we looked at our metrics on how we increasingly ban people, because we suspend people, and then we start adding up a little bit here and there, and if they won't improve, then we ban them permanently. So we looked at that, and we said, okay, we're going to intensify this.
Yep.
We're going to make sure that we're going to heavily focus on positive player behavior, but also give people the opportunity to correct themselves. So let them know that if you aren't going to improve yourself, then, hey, you're going to be suspended. And if it's too intense, you're not making a wonderful environment for 9 other people that you're playing with, or 5 other people you're playing with, and we're going to take you out from the game. Because it's just not worth it that way. So this Banhammer initiative is that initiative where we have 2 things. We have machine learning, evaluating people's reports. We also have a dedicated team that looks at reports every single week, and they get a report that's sent out to all of us, and we review that. So we look at the numbers and the metrics and say, okay, is this working out? Are people improving? And we've seen that right now, the majority of people tend to correct themselves, tend to go, okay, you know, I was a little too heated on here, I can chill out a little bit, let me calm down and come back to the game. And then we have banned people too, more often if they don't correct themselves, because the Smite community as a whole is worth it. It's not worth having these few people hurting it. Anyways, that's my soapbox. I'm going to post about it. I mean, Banhammer's coming down if you don't correct yourself.
We did ban more people, and Richard made that happen, and we made sure we did it tactically, though.
Indeed.
And we also designed...
Does that mean that you wore vests?
Came out of the crowd.
It's a joke.
We also designed
Yeah,
some
I like
features to combat this as well. So the commendation feature was actually pretty helpful in this regard. And it's funny, it's, you know, very small psychological changes can have big impacts. And even I think the commendation feature was successful, even if you don't use it, just because that extra little bit of delay before you get into the PC lobby to start typing things and be mad, that helps people reset just a little bit. Or they get just a little distracted, and then they're willing to maybe just say GG and move on, as opposed to typing out what they would before. Because the heat from the gameplay comes right there, and just that little bit of time to process can help you. But of course, I think the systems we gave there to praise your teammates made that even more positive. And of course, the big thing that we think is going to improve this a lot coming forward into Season 6 is roll queue. So this should avoid some of that arguments that
the debate.
Nothing feels worse than feeling like you've lost the match before it even starts, because people are arguing and bickering and trying
I'm gonna feed because you didn't let me play mid chalk or
So
whatever.
now with roll queue, people will be assigned roles, and hopefully there'll be less arguing, and we will be implementing new report options and enforcing playing by your role, and we'll be following up on that. That'll be something that'll be interesting to see going forward, to make sure that people can have a good experience.
It's good to hear that you guys are taking that like so seriously, because a lot of times, like, when you report somebody, it can feel like you're like shouting into the void. It's like it can feel like I've reported this person who just called me slurs I had to look up.
Yeah.
They haven't used that word since the 1500s, but I had to, and it was awful. Like, and then when you report, and then you just see, it can feel like overwhelming, especially in lower elos, or lower divisions. It can feel like it's every game, and that makes it like, for people who want to commit to the game, like, it's the reason I quit League of Legends. Was the community was so bad that I loved.
It was bad for his health.
I physically messed up my blood pressure, because it's like people are getting so like death threats. Like, it gets bad. Like, strangers on the internet over a video game. It's ridiculous.
I had a week and a half in Paladins where I came across 3 different versions of the name Hitler did nothing wrong. And as a Jew,
Yeah, those
that was not a fun
You should send
time.
us those names. 'Cause we'll-
Yeah.
I did. I
We'll
actually
get-
did
yeah.
when it happened.
Yeah,
I
we'll
sent
get
it
rid
to.
I've got a couple of Switch screenshots I need to send y'all, but
there you go.
but yeah, so it's relieving to hear you guys
Definitely
taking a
care
very
about that.
serious attitude.
It's very
about it.
important to us.
For the vast majority of Smite games are positive, or people don't say anything at all. That's the vast majority of Smite games. But if there's one person out of like 10 of the games you play or 20 of the games you play, it does make an impact to you. So we definitely want to hear that. We want to move towards not the vast majority, but almost every match be that sportsmanship like environment. I mean, we're on it together. Yes, we're playing competitively. We're here to have
But it's
fun.
still a game.
Yes,
Damn,
yeah,
like
and just enjoy it.
calm
So,
down.
Yeah.
we're aiming to do that, and we're definitely listening to the community and reports. If you have that one person out of your 10 or 20 games that is rooting for you, report it. We do have two
does
things:
matter.
machine learning and real people reviewing every single.
And now we notify people when their reports result in something, which we see.
That's one of my
people being
favorite
really
things to
positive,
see when I
yeah,
look.
about that feature. Yeah.
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 Fantastic. I want to close with one final question. I'm gonna pass it to you
Oh.
and then to AJ.
Okay.
I just want to remind you guys that this question there's no real right or wrong answers, so please keep that in mind.
Intense.
Yeah. So, who's your quick? Don't think about it. Gun to your head.
Okay.
Who's your favorite Smite god?
Pele, hands down.
Okay.
we know AJ's.
Goobus.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, you know.
You said Pele and you said Goobus, aka Anubis.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, those are both incorrect because you did not say Odin. Thanks, everybody. I'm Colton for MMOHuts.com. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you, AJ. It's a pleasure as always. We'll talk your ear off about Magic later. Thank you. Make sure you subscribe down below to MMOHuts' YouTube channel. Check us out over on MMOHuts.com for all the latest gaming reviews and news. I promise I write better than I talk. And you can see more coverage of HiRez Expo at Dreamhack Atlanta all throughout the remainder of the weekend right here on MMOHuts.